Hello and welcome. Before the Drow were cursed, before the Underdark knew the tread of elven feet, before Lolt claimed her terrible throne of webs and lies, there was a goddess who danced beneath the stars. Her name was Eilistraee, and you are about to discover why she chose to fall into darkness, so that others might one day rise into the light. This is not simply a story of a deity. This is the tale of the greatest sacrifice in elven history, a choice that would echo through millennia and offer hope to a race condemned to eternal night. You stand now at the beginning of understanding, where the threads of fate first began to weave their pattern. Long before the Drow knew hatred, before their skin turned dark as punishment, and their hearts grew cold with spider venom, the elven pantheon existed in harmony. This was the age of the Seldarine, the elven gods who dwelt in Arvandor, that blessed realm of eternal beauty where the trees sang and the rivers flowed with liquid starlight. Among these divine beings, there existed a love story that would birth both salvation and damnation. Corellin Larethian, the first of the Seldarine, lord of all elves and master of magic and warfare, stood as the pinnacle of elven divinity. Beautiful beyond mortal comprehension, fluid in form, Corellin represented everything the elven people aspired to become. His was the domain of magic, art, warfare, and the very essence of what it meant to be elven. And for countless eons, he loved a goddess named Eilistraee. Eilistraee, the weaver, held dominion over destiny and artisans, her fingers crafting the futures of mortals with threads invisible to all but divine sight. She was beautiful, clever, and ambitious. So ambitious, in those early days, she appeared devoted to Corellin, and together they created something magnificent. They created children. Two children who would become gods in their own right, who would shape the destiny of millions, who would stand on opposite sides of an eternal conflict that continues to this day. Some accounts suggest the children were twins, while others describe their births differently. What remains clear across all tellings is their existence and their natures. Viheron, called the Masked Lord even in those early times, embodied the hidden aspects of the elven spirit, the shadows that dance at the edges of firelight, the secrets whispered in darkness. He favored his mother in temperament and would eventually follow her path into darkness and treachery. And then there was his sister, Eilistraee. From the moment of her divine birth, Eilistraee embodied light. Not the harsh, revealing light of the sun that exposes and judges, but the gentle, silver light of the moon that guides without condemning, that illuminates without burning. She was beauty incarnate, but not the cold, distant beauty of a statue. Hers was the beauty of movement, of music, of joy expressed through dance and song. Where her brother Viheron learned to move in shadows, Eilistraee danced in moonlight. Where he schemed and plotted, she sang and laughed. You must understand that Eilistraee was not naive, despite her joy. She possessed the wisdom of the divine, the understanding that comes from being born with knowledge of the cosmos itself, based on what unfolded later. It seems she sensed the growing corruption in her mother's heart long before others did, perceiving the darkness that Eilistraee hid beneath layers of deception. But Eilistraee believed in redemption. She believed in the possibility of change, in the power of compassion to transform even the most twisted soul. This belief, this fundamental aspect of her divine nature, would define everything that followed. In Arvandor, Eilistraee spent her early existence learning from the other members of the Seldarine. From Hanali Selenil, goddess of love and beauty, she learned the arts of aesthetic perfection and the ways that beauty could inspire mortal hearts to greatness. From Labla's Enerith, the philosopher of time, she understood the long view, the patience required to see plans spanning millennia come to fruition. From Solanar the Landira, the great hunter, she learned the way of the bow, the art of providing for those who depend on you, the sacred balance between predator and prey. But her greatest teacher was Corellin himself. The first of the Seldarine saw in his daughter a reflection of his own best qualities, the joy and creativity that existed before the weight of cosmic responsibility settled upon his shoulders. He taught her the way of the sword, not as a weapon of conquest, but as an instrument of protection. He showed her how steel could sing, how a blade in motion could become a form of prayer, how combat itself could be transformed into dance when performed with proper grace and intention. Under the stars of Arvandor, Eilistraee would dance for hours that stretched into days. She moved between the silver trees, her bare feet touching earth that had never known corruption, her voice lifting in wordless songs that made the very flowers bloom more brightly. Other gods would pause in their duties to watch her, drawn by the pure expression of joy she radiated. Even stern Corellin would smile, seeing in his daughter the best of what divinity could offer to the mortal realm below. The elves who walked the material world in those distant days knew Eilistraee as a goddess of moonlit joy, a patron of dancers and singers, a guardian of those who traveled by night. They built no grand temples to her, for she preferred sacred groves where moonlight could filter through leaves. They offered no blood sacrifices, for she desired only song and dance, the movement of bodies in celebration of life itself. Small shrines marked clearings where her faithful would gather when the moon was full, dancing until dawn kissed the horizon, their voices rising in harmonies that seemed to make the boundary between mortal and divine grow thin. She had favorites among the mortal elves, those whose spirits resonated with her own. She appeared to them in visions, a dark-haired goddess with skin like polished mahogany, eyes like pools of starlight, moving through moonbeams as though they were solid paths. She would dance with them, teach them new songs, bless their hunts, and guide their arrows to feed their tribes. She asked nothing in return except that they remember joy, that they dance when the moon was full, that they offer kindness to strangers traveling in darkness. But even in those blessed times, shadows gathered. Eilistree's corruption grew deeper, fed by jealousy of Corallin's position and resentment at being second in the pantheon. As tensions between the elven peoples and other races intensified, Eilistraee saw opportunity in chaos. She began to plot, to scheme, to gather allies among the darker powers of the cosmos. She hid her growing alliance with evil deities behind smiles and loving words. She played the devoted consort while sharpening knives in secret. Viheron, her brother, was drawn into their mother's web of conspiracy. Whether through manipulation or willing participation, he joined Eilistree's alliance against Corallin and the Seldarine. The relationship between the siblings grew strained during these years, their fundamental natures pulling them in opposite directions. Where Eilistraee sought to bring light into darkness, Viheron learned to use darkness as a tool. Where she offered compassion, he embraced ambition. The exact nature of Eilistree's involvement in what came next remains a matter of divine mystery. What is known is that when Eilistree's conspiracy finally came to light, when the Weaver's betrayal was revealed in all its terrible scope, Eilistraee found herself caught in circumstances beyond her control. Her mother had woven a trap so complex, had manipulated events so thoroughly, that even the innocent could become entangled in her web. The other gods of the Seldarine began to notice the growing corruption. Whispers spread through Arvandor like wind through leaves. It was Sehanine Moonbow who finally unveiled Eilistree's treachery, exposing the full extent of her conspiracy. The Weaver had formed what would be called the Dark Seldarine, an alliance including Viheron, the Orcish god Gruumshwanai, and other dark powers. Their plan was to strike at Corallin directly, to kill or diminish the first of the Seldarine, and remake the elven pantheon in Eilistree's image. War was coming to Arvandor. The Seldarine would face an assault from within and without. And from that divine conflict, a new race would be born, transformed by curse and exile into something the world had never seen before. The Drow were coming, though they did not know it yet. And Eilistraee, goddess of moonlight and song, would soon face the choice that would define her existence for all eternity. But first, there would be war. Section 2. The Descent and Ultimate Sacrifice. The conspiracy began in whispers, in meetings held in places between places where even gods might lose their way. Eilistreee had grown patient in her plotting, spending centuries building alliances with powers that dwelt far from Arvandor's light. She reached out to Gruumshwanai, the Orcish deity whose hatred of Corallin burned eternal since the first of the Seldarine had taken his eye in ancient combat. She made promises to other dark powers whose names were spoken only in curses, building a web of conspiracy that would make her future spider form seem prophetic. Her plans centered on striking at Corallin directly, using the access granted by love and trust to deliver a blow that would shatter the Seldarine forever. With the first of the Seldarine fallen or diminished, she would claim his position, remake the elven pantheon in her own image, and rule over all elvenkind as their supreme goddess. It was ambitious, audacious, and very nearly succeeded. Eilistraee recruited her son Viheron into the conspiracy, playing upon his own ambitions and his resentment at being overlooked in the divine hierarchy. The masked lord agreed readily, seeing opportunity in chaos, advancement in patricide. Mother and son plotted together, refining their strategy, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They did not tell Eilistraee, whether this was because they knew she would never agree, or because they intended something else for her remains a matter of divine mystery. What happened next has been told and retold across millennia, with certain facts remaining constant while others shift depending on the source. The attack came during a time of great turmoil, when conflicts between elves and other races had reached a breaking point. Eilistraee chose her moment carefully, striking when Corellin's attention was divided, when the Seldarine faced pressures from multiple directions. The assault was coordinated and devastating. Eilistraee used her intimate knowledge of Corellin to get close, to catch him vulnerable in a moment when even gods can be surprised. She struck with weapons blessed by evil deities, blades that could harm even divine flesh. Simultaneously, her allied powers launched their attacks. Griumsh led Orcish divine forces against the borders of Arvandor. Other dark gods pressed their assaults across multiple fronts. The war of the Seldarine had begun, and the cosmos itself seemed to hold its breath. During this chaos, something involving Eilistraee occurred that would seal her fate alongside her mother and brother. The exact nature of her involvement remains unclear, with different accounts suggesting different possibilities. Some tellings imply she was manipulated by Eilistraee into inadvertently aiding the conspiracy, perhaps tricked into performing some action that weakened Corellin's defenses without understanding its true purpose. Other accounts suggest she simply bore the stain of being Eilistraee's daughter, guilty by association, in a moment when the Seldarine could afford no ambiguity. What is certain is that Corellin, though wounded grievously, refused to fall. His will alone kept him conscious, kept him fighting, even as his divine essence bled away. He called out to his fellow gods, and they answered with fury that shook the plains themselves. Sehanine Moonbow turned the very light of the moon into a weapon. Hanali Selenil channeled love itself into protective barriers. Solanar the Landira's arrows found targets across dimensional boundaries. The Seldarine rallied around their wounded leader, and their combined might began to turn the tide of battle. The conspiracy collapsed as quickly as it had erupted. Griumsh retreated with his remaining forces. The other dark deities who had allied with Eilistraee abandoned her cause, leaving the Weaver alone to face judgment. The war that should have destroyed the Seldarine instead destroyed only those who had betrayed them. Corellin, restored somewhat by the healing magics of his loyal gods, prepared to pass sentence. The judgment was absolute and terrible. Eilistraee would be cast out from Arvandor forever, exiled to the abyss, transformed into a form matching her inner corruption. She would become a demon goddess, a creature of spiders and lies. She would be called Lolt, and her name would be spoken with fear and hatred for all the ages to come. Viheron would share her exile, cast out from Arvandor, separated from the Seldarine forever. But the sentence did not end with the direct conspirators. The elves who had worshipped Eilistraee, who had participated in her rituals, who had given her their devotion, would also face punishment. They bore no direct guilt for her crimes, but they had enabled her power, fed her divine strength with their prayers. They would be transformed and exiled, driven from the surface world into the lightless depths beneath the earth. They would become the Dark Elves, the Drow, forever marked by their association with the fallen goddess. You must understand the magnitude of this curse. The elves who would become Drow were not evil before this moment. They were simply followers of Eilistraee, artisans and crafters who had honored the weaver for her domain over their work. They were mothers and fathers, children and elders, entire communities who had done nothing more sinister than pray to a goddess who seemed to embody beauty and skill. Their punishment was collective, absolute, and transformative. The transformation began with their skin. The warm tones of surface elves darkened to obsidian black, to deep purple, to charcoal gray. Their hair lightened to pure white or pale silver, creating a stark contrast that would mark them forever as different, as cursed. Their eyes changed, becoming sensitive to light, able to pierce darkness, but pained by the sun they had once loved. Their very bodies adapted to life underground, growing stronger in some ways, more fragile in others, developing innate magical abilities that would help them survive in the hostile depths. As they were driven into the Underdark, as they descended through miles of stone into caverns that had never known daylight, the full weight of their exile became clear. The curse carried more than physical changes. It brought a spiritual transformation, a shift in how they perceived themselves and each other. The society that would develop in the darkness would be shaped by Lolt's whispers, by the harsh realities of Underdark survival, by the abandonment they felt from the gods who had cast them down. And here, at this crucial moment, Eilistraee made her choice. The circumstances surrounding this choice remain complex, with different interpretations offering different understandings. Some accounts suggest she was included in the exile, punished alongside her mother and brother for her inadvertent role in the conspiracy, making her descent mandatory rather than voluntary. Other tellings emphasize her deliberate choice to follow the cursed elves, a sacrifice made freely despite having the option to remain in Arvandor. What seems most likely, drawing together the various threads of this story, is that both elements contain truth. Eilistraee may have been exiled from Arvandor as punishment, but she embraced that exile rather than resenting it, transforming punishment into purpose, whether forced or voluntary. She chose to make her exile meaningful, to use her separation from the Seldarine to serve those who needed her most. When Corellin pronounced judgment on the cursed elves, when he declared that they would be driven into darkness and exile, Eilistraee stepped forward. In a voice clear and unwavering, she declared that she would go with them into the depths. She would share their darkness, become their guardian and guide, offer them an alternative to Lolt's poison. She would not abandon them to face the Underdark alone, would not leave them with only the Spider Queen's cruelty as their divine guidance. If she was being punished, she accepted that punishment without complaint. If she was free to choose, she chose exile. In either case, she transformed the moment into an act of compassion, a statement that no soul deserves abandonment, that even the cursed and exiled deserve a goddess who loves them. Corellin tried to dissuade her, whether from exile or from embracing it so completely. He had already lost a lover to betrayal and a son to ambition. The thought of losing his daughter to self-imposed separation from Arvandor pained him beyond measure, but Eilistraee remained unmoved. These people would need someone to remember them, to love them, to believe in their potential for redemption. Without her, they would have only Lolt, only the Spider Queen's vision of what they could become. The other gods added their voices, some in support, others in protest. But ultimately, they could not prevent her choice. Before she descended, they blessed her. Corellin placed his hands upon her head and granted her additional power to sustain her through the trials ahead. He gave her dominion over the moon itself, that its light might reach even into the Underdark's deepest caverns. He strengthened her sword arm, that she might protect those who could not protect themselves. He blessed her voice, that her songs might carry hope through miles of stone. The other Seldarine added their blessings. Hanali blessed her with enduring love that could not be corrupted. Sehanine gave her deeper connection to Moonlight and the wisdom to guide souls through darkness. Solonor granted her the hunter's patience and the ability to provide for those in need. Each god contributed some portion of their power to strengthen Eilistraee for the task ahead. Thus blessed, thus prepared, Eilistraee descended. She followed the cursed elves as they were driven into the earth, her presence a comfort to those few who could perceive it. She watched as they stumbled through darkness, as they learned to navigate by senses other than sight, as they discovered the vast network of caverns that would become their new home. She grieved as Lolt's whispers began to take hold, as the Spider Queen offered survival at the cost of their souls. As slowly, inexorably, the culture that would become the Drow began to crystallize around principles of cruelty and domination. But she did not despair. In the darkness, Eilistraee danced. By the light of luminescent fungi and phosphorescent minerals, she sang. To those who would listen, she appeared in visions, offering an alternative path. She taught them that they could survive without becoming monsters, could maintain their compassion even in the Underdark's harsh environment, could remember the joy they had lost without losing hope of one day reclaiming it. Her first followers were few, scattered individuals who heard her call and answered despite the risks. They were hunted by Lolt's faithful, persecuted as heretics, driven to the edges of the emerging Drow civilization. But they persisted, keeping alive the memory of Moonlight, preserving songs that spoke of surface nights and star-filled skies. They became the first seeds of hope in an ocean of darkness, the first proof that not all Drow would follow Lolt's path. Eilistraee established her church in secret places, hidden groves deep in the Underdark, where her power protected worshippers from Lolt's persecution. She taught them to dance as she danced, to sing as she sang, to remember joy even in the midst of suffering. She showed them how to hunt without cruelty, how to provide for communities without domination, how to build beauty without slavery. The price of her choice became clear over centuries. Eilistraee was separated from the Seldarine, cut off from Arvandor's light, dwelling in darkness to be near those she had chosen to protect. She could not prevent the rise of Lolt's civilization, could not stop the matriarchal society built on betrayal and cruelty from becoming the dominant Drow culture. She could only offer an alternative, could only preserve the possibility of redemption for those brave enough to seek it. She became known as the Dark Maiden, a title that spoke to both her choice to dwell in darkness and her continued embodiment of maiden virtues like compassion, hope, and nurturing protection. Where Lolt became the Spider Queen, demanding blood and treachery, Eilistraee remained the goddess of moonlight and song, asking only for joy and kindness. Where Lolt created a society where the strong devoured the weak, Eilistraee taught cooperation and mutual support. The Drow had fallen, and whether by punishment or by choice, Eilistraee had fallen with them. And in that descent, she became something unique in the pantheons of all the worlds. She became the goddess of redemption itself, the living proof that no soul is beyond hope, no race beyond salvation, no darkness so deep that light cannot penetrate it. Her sacrifice, whether forced or voluntary, made possible every Drow who would one day choose good over evil, every dark elf who would reject Lolt and seek the surface, every outcast who would find in the Dark Maidens embrace the acceptance and love their own people denied them. The descent was complete. The sacrifice was made. And in the darkest depths of the Underdark, beneath miles of stone and ages of sorrow, Moonlight still danced. Section 3. Divine Nature and Sacred Portfolio. You need to understand what Eilistraee truly is, beneath the stories of sacrifice and exile. She is not simply a goddess who chose darkness. She is moonlight incarnate, beauty made divine, the living embodiment of everything the Drow lost when they descended into the Underdark. Her very nature stands in direct opposition to everything Lolt represents. And this opposition defines not just her theology, but the hope she offers to an entire race. When mortals speak of Eilistraee's portfolio, they list song, beauty, dance, swordwork, hunting, and moonlight. But these are merely labels, inadequate words attempting to capture something far more profound. Her domains are not separate territories. She administrates like a bureaucrat managing provinces. They are facets of a single, unified vision of what life should be, what the Drow could reclaim if they would only reach for it. Begin with Moonlight, for it is the most fundamental aspect of her divine essence. Eilistraee does not simply control the moon or borrow its radiance. She embodies moonlight itself, the soft silver glow that guides travelers through darkness without blinding them, that reveals beauty without harsh judgment. The moon in all its phases answers to her will, but she favors the full moon above all others, for it represents completeness, wholeness, the fullness of potential realized. When you see moonlight filtering through cavern cracks into underdark depths, when you witness its gentle glow touching places that should know only absolute darkness, you witness Eilistraee's power made manifest. Her connection to the moon runs deeper than mere affinity. She can cause moonlight to appear where none should exist, can summon its radiance into sealed chambers miles beneath the earth, can make it shine through solid stone if her purpose requires it. Worshippers who dance in her moonbeams report feeling physically lighter, as though gravity itself loosens its grip in the presence of her sacred light. The moon's phases guide her faithful in their rituals, with the full moon being the most holy time, when her power reaches its peak, and her presence can be felt most strongly. Song and dance are not separate from this moonlight, but extensions of it. Eilistraee's songs are prayers without words, expressions of joy and sorrow, and hope that transcend language barriers. A human listening to a Drow priestess sing in Eilistraee's name would understand the emotion even without comprehending the words, would feel the hope and beauty being expressed at a level deeper than conscious thought. Her music bypasses the mind to speak directly to the soul, reminding listeners of everything they have lost and everything they might yet reclaim. The dances sacred to Eilistraee follow no rigid choreography. They are spontaneous expressions of emotion, movements that flow from the heart rather than being memorized and repeated. Her faithful dance with swords, with scarves, with their bare hands tracing patterns in moonlit air. They spin and leap and sway, their bodies becoming instruments through which divine grace flows into the material world. These dances serve multiple purposes simultaneously. They are worship and meditation, celebration and mourning, prayer and prophecy, all woven together in movement. When Eilistraee herself dances, reality bends to accommodate her. The very air seems to shimmer with possibility, and those who witness her movements report time seeming to slow or speed. Hours passing in what feels like moments, or single moments stretching into subjective eternities of beauty. To watch the Dark Maiden dance is to glimpse perfection, to understand at a visceral level what the Drow lost and what they might regain. Her physical form, when she chooses to manifest, reflects her dual nature as both Drow and deity. She appears as a dark elf of surpassing beauty, standing 9 feet tall with long, strong, graceful limbs. Her skin is glossy obsidian dark, described in some accounts as black as the night sky itself. Her hair flows ankle length, of a luminous silvery hue that seems to glow with its own radiance. Her eyes are large and expressive, with irises that hold shifting hints of blue like moonstones catching light. Her features are delicately sculpted, bearing some resemblance to the beauty her mother once possessed before transformation into the Spider Queen. She typically appears unclothed or wearing only minimal garments, cloaked by her hair and silvery radiances that move about her body like living light. This is not from any immodesty, but because her teachings emphasize freedom from shame, acceptance of natural beauty, rejection of the body hatred that Lolt's society imposes on its victims. Her form is athletic and graceful, the body of a dancer and hunter combined, showing the strength required for both pursuits. When she manifests bearing weapons, she carries a silver bastard sword known as the Moon Sword. This blade seems to sing as it cuts the air, catching and reflecting moonlight even in total darkness. The Moon Sword is more than simply a weapon. It is a dancing, keen bastard sword of extraordinary power, representing her role as protector and her teaching that beauty and strength need not be separate. She wields it with devastating grace, her combat style flowing seamlessly into dance, her strikes becoming choreography that happens to fell enemies. The bastard sword itself carries deep symbolic meaning for her faith. It is a weapon that can be wielded one-handed or two-handed, representing adaptability and choice. It is elegant, yet deadly, beautiful yet practical. It serves equally well for defense and offense, for protecting the innocent and striking down oppressors. Her faithful who take up the sword in her name learn to see their blades as extensions of their bodies, their combat as sacred movement, their violence as necessary but never celebrated. Hunting forms another crucial aspect of her portfolio, but her version of hunting bears little resemblance to sport or bloodlust. Eilistraee teaches hunting as sacred provision, the practice of taking life to sustain life, done with respect and gratitude. Her faithful hunt to feed their communities, tracking game through underdark tunnels with skills honed by divine blessing. They waste nothing of what they kill, honoring the sacrifice of the creature that died to sustain them. They hunt only what they need, never for trophies or pleasure in the kill itself. This hunting extends metaphorically to hunting for lost souls, tracking down Drow who might be saved from Lolt's influence, pursuing redemption through the tangled paths of underdark politics and society. Her priestesses become hunters of hope, seeking out those who might be ready to hear her message. who show signs of questioning the Spider Queen's tyranny. They risk their lives, entering Drow cities to whisper of alternatives, to plant seeds of doubt in Lolt's doctrine, to offer escape routes to those brave enough to flee. Beauty, as Eilistraee understands it, encompasses far more than physical appearance. It is the beauty of a life lived freely, of communities built on cooperation rather than domination, of art created for joy rather than to glorify tyrants. It is the beauty of a mother holding her child without fear of being betrayed. It is the beauty of lovers trusting each other completely. It is the beauty of old friends sharing stories under moonlight. These simple, profound moments of grace are more precious to the Dark Maiden than the most exquisite sculpture or perfectly crafted weapon. Her sacred symbols reflect these aspects of her nature. The primary symbol shows a nude female drow with long silver hair dancing with a silver bastard sword in front of a full moon. Variations exist, some showing simply a sword outlined against a full moon, or a silver sword crossed with a lunar disk. Her faithful wear these symbols openly when they can, secretly when they must. Some variations add elements like musical notes or dancing figures, but all retain the fundamental imagery of blade and moon, the two core aspects of her identity. The colors sacred to Eilistraee are silver, white, and blue, the colors of moonlight and the night sky. Her faithful dress in these colors when possible, though practical considerations in the dangerous Underdark often require more subtle displays of devotion. Silver jewelry, white scarves, blue accents woven into otherwise dark clothing, all serve to mark her followers, while not making them obvious targets for Lolt's servants. Moonstones hold particular sanctity in her faith, being physical crystallizations of lunar energy. Her priestesses often wear moonstones as jewelry, and major temples contain altars of polished moonstone that glow with soft radiance when her presence draws near. These stones serve as focuses for divine magic, conduits through which her power flows more easily into the material world. She demonstrates her favor by having her followers find mithril, moonstones, and silver in their travels. Some of her most powerful relics are moonstone weapons or armor, items that shine with captured moonlight and grant protection to those who bear them. Her divine realm exists in a complex relationship with both Arvandor and the Underdark, reflecting her unique position among the gods. For millennia after her exile, her primary realm existed outside Arvandor, separated from the Seldarine as she was separated from her divine family. But in the early 1300s Dale reckoning, during a cosmological rearrangement, Eilistraee was allowed to move her divine realm back to Arvandor. This could imply that Corellin and the Seldarine had softened toward her after millennia of exile, recognizing the validity of her mission and the purity of her sacrifice. Whether this happened from material necessity or represented reconciliation with her divine family remains a matter of interpretation. Her realm in Arvandor is called the Hill of the Dancing Moon, a place where it is always night and a full moon shines brightly in the midnight blue sky. Here, perpetual moonlight shines on silver grass, and the air perpetually carries music that invites dancing. The faithful who die in her service come to this blessed place, where they dance forever beneath her moon, free from pain and fear and the cruelties of the world they left behind. It is a small realm compared to those of the greater Seldarine, for much of her divine energy remains focused on the material world, where her Drow followers still struggle. She maintained a temple in the Demonweb pits for a time, a defiant presence in Lolt's own realm. But this remained mostly empty, and she rarely visited it. Based on what is known of divine politics, this could have served as a statement, a reminder to the Spider Queen that Eilistraee would not be driven away entirely, that she claimed right to exist even in Lolt's territory. The practical value of such a realm seems questionable, suggesting its purpose was primarily symbolic. Her divine servants include beings of moonlight and music, creatures that embody her aspects in purer forms than mortal flesh allows. These servants carry her messages to those who need guidance, appear in visions to mark individuals for special purposes, and sometimes intervene directly to protect her faithful from overwhelming danger. Her petitioners, the souls of her faithful who have died and come to serve her in the afterlife, work to guide newly arrived souls and to help mortal worshippers from the material plane. They retain their identities and memories from life, but exist in a state of blessed grace, free from pain and fear, able to serve their goddess with perfect devotion. Animals sacred to her include deer, which represent grace and beauty moving through forests. Some of her surface temples keep deer as sacred animals, allowing them to roam temple grounds freely, treating them as honored guests rather than livestock. These deer are never hunted or harmed, representing the reverence for life that underlies even her teachings about necessary hunting. Drawing from broader connections to Underdark creatures, it seems likely that certain bats and other creatures that navigate through darkness might also hold significance in her faith, though specific sacred status for particular species varies by regional practice. The full moon holds supreme importance in her faith. When the moon above the surface world reaches its fullest expression, her power peaks regardless of location. Her faithful in the deepest Underdark can feel the full moon's presence through miles of stone, can sense its radiant completeness, calling them to celebration. This is the holiest time for gatherings, for major rituals, for attempts to contact the goddess directly through prayer and dance. During the full moon, Eilistraee's manifestations become more frequent and more powerful. She appears to guide lost souls, to bless major undertakings, to grant visions of what might be if her faithful persist in their struggles. Her priestesses report stronger connections to divine magic during these times, their spells flowing more easily, their prayers answered more directly. Even non-magical followers feel the difference, experience a lifting of spirits, a renewal of hope that sustains them through the darker phases that follow. But she does not abandon her faithful when the moon wanes. The new moon, when darkness is most complete, represents different but equally important aspects of her teaching. It symbolizes the faith required to persist even when light seems absent, the trust that darkness is temporary and illumination will return. Her followers learn to find meaning in both the full moon's radiance and the new moon's shadow, understanding that both are necessary. Both contain lessons worth learning. Her divine nature encompasses seeming contradictions that become unified in her person. She is a goddess of joy who understands sorrow intimately. She is a deity of peace who teaches the sacred use of violence. She offers redemption while acknowledging that some souls are beyond saving. She promises freedom while demanding discipline from her followers. These paradoxes confuse outsiders, but make perfect sense to those who truly understand her teachings. Life itself is paradox, and a goddess who would guide souls through life's complexities must embody its contradictions. The power she grants her faithful manifests in distinctive ways. Clerics of Eilistraee find their divine magic carrying a musical quality, their healing spells accompanied by distant harmonies, their combat blessings marked by rhythms that guide the body into perfect timing. They develop enhanced grace and coordination, moving with liquid fluidity that marks them as touched by divine dance. Their voices become more beautiful, capable of reaching notes and sustaining tones beyond normal mortal capacity. She teaches that divinity should be accessible, not remote and fearsome. Her faithful can speak her name without terror, can approach her without elaborate rituals of abasement, can question her teachings without fear of punishment. She wants worshippers who choose her freely, who understand why they follow her path rather than simply obeying from fear. This approach makes her seem weak to those who misunderstand, but it creates followers of passionate conviction rather than cowering slaves. In essence, Eilistraee is hope personified, redemption made divine, the promise that no fall is too far, no darkness too deep, no soul too corrupted to find its way back to light. Her divine nature encompasses everything the Drow lost and everything they might reclaim. She is the memory of what was and the vision of what could be, standing eternal in the space between, calling to those who would hear, dancing for those who would watch, singing for those who would listen. And through it all, in every manifestation and every aspect, she remains constant in her fundamental message. You are not what Lolt says you are. You can be more. You can be free. You can dance in moonlight once again. Section 4. The Faithful and Sacred Practices. The faith of Eilistraee draws followers from places you might not expect, from circumstances both tragic and hopeful. Her worshippers come primarily from the Drow, as you would imagine, but not all Drow, and not only Drow. Her church embraces anyone who seeks what she offers, anyone who understands the value of redemption and the beauty of moonlight. But to understand her faithful, you must first understand what it means to choose her path in a world where that choice can cost everything. Most of her Drow followers are female, though not by divine mandate or preference. Eilistraee herself welcomes male and female equally, sees no fundamental difference in their capacity for grace or redemption. But Drow society under Lolt's influence creates hierarchies where females dominate and males exist as lesser beings, sometimes barely more than slaves. Males who seek escape from this oppression often turn to Viheron, the masked lord who promises power and revenge. Females who question Lolt's cruelty but seek something gentler, something nurturing rather than dominating, find themselves drawn to the Dark Maiden's moonlit dance. These Drow who come to Eilistraee often arrive broken, bearing scars, both physical and spiritual, from lives lived under the Spider Queen's tyranny. They have witnessed betrayals that would destroy lesser souls, participated in cruelties that haunt their dreams, survived in a society where trust itself is considered weakness. They come seeking forgiveness for things they were forced to do, seeking hope that they can become something other than the monsters Lolt demands they be. And Eilistraee welcomes them all, asks only that they try to be better, that they reach for the light even when darkness feels safer. But her faithful are not limited to Drow seeking redemption. Surface elves occasionally find themselves drawn to her worship, particularly those who work to help escaped Drow integrate into surface society. They see in Eilistraee a bridge between worlds, a goddess who understands both the beauty of the surface and the harsh realities of the Underdark. They serve as teachers and guides, helping Drow refugees learn to navigate sunlight, to trust surface dwellers, to believe that freedom is possible. Humans, half-elves, and even some halflings and gnomes number among her faithful, drawn by her message of redemption and second chances. Former criminals seeking to atone for past misdeeds find comfort in her teachings. Outcasts from rigid societies discover acceptance in her embrace. Artists and musicians venerate her as a patron of their crafts, honoring the joy she finds in creative expression. Her church becomes a refuge for the marginalized, the rejected, the ones who do not fit into neat categories that other faiths demand. The structure of her church defies traditional hierarchies. She has no supreme pontiff, no rigid chain of command, no central authority dictating doctrine from distant thrones. Instead, her faith operates as a loose network of individual temples and wandering priestesses, each following her teachings as they understand them, coordinating through mutual respect rather than imposed authority. This structure frustrates those who prefer order and clarity, but it reflects Eilistraee's fundamental teaching. Freedom matters more than efficiency, choice more than obedience. Her clergy are called priestesses regardless of gender, a deliberate choice to reclaim a term that in Drow society signifies power and authority, but in her church signifies service and devotion. Male priests of Eilistraee proudly bear the title priestess, understanding it as statement of equality, rejection of the gender hierarchies that poison Drow culture. They serve alongside their female counterparts with identical responsibilities and identical respect. To become a priestess of Eilistraee requires no formal education or aristocratic birth, no wealth or political connections. She calls those she calls, speaks to hearts ready to hear her message, appears in dreams and visions to mark individuals for service. Those who feel her call must then seek out existing clergy for training, or in rare cases, establish their own practices if they dwell too far from existing temples. The training focuses on practical skills, how to channel divine magic, how to lead rituals, how to counsel those seeking redemption, how to survive in hostile environments where Lolt's faithful outnumber you thousands to one. Physical requirements exist, but they are symbolic rather than restrictive. Priestesses must be able to dance, but this does not mean they must be physically perfect. Those with injuries or disabilities adapt the sacred dances to their capabilities, understanding that the movement of the heart matters more than the movement of the body. They must be able to sing, but tone deafness is not disqualifying if the emotion behind the song rings true. They must learn sword work, but this too can be adapted, for the sword represents protection and the willingness to defend the innocent, not mere technical proficiency. One requirement remains absolute and non-negotiable. Priestesses of Eilistraee must perform their most sacred rituals skyclad, a term meaning unclothed, wearing nothing but moonlight and their goddess's blessing. This practice horrifies outsiders and confuses those unfamiliar with her teachings, but it carries deep symbolic meaning. The Drow of Lolt's society use clothing as armor, as status symbols, as tools of deception and seduction. To stand naked under moonlight is to strip away all pretense, all social roles, all the lies that Drow society demands. It is to present yourself to the goddess exactly as you are, without hiding, without shame, accepting your natural form as sacred. These skyclad rituals occur during the full moon in sacred spaces, hidden groves, or temple sanctuaries where privacy can be maintained. They are not sexual or indecent despite surface prejudices that assume otherwise. They are acts of worship, moments of profound vulnerability before the divine, statements of trust that your goddess will protect you when you cannot protect yourself. Participants report feeling liberated rather than exposed, blessed rather than diminished, connected to something greater than themselves. Among her clergy exist specialized orders with specific functions. The sword dancers form her most visible militant order, warrior priestesses who combine combat prowess with divine magic and sacred dance. They train for years to master the difficult art of fighting, while maintaining the fluid grace of dancers, learning to make every strike flow into the next, like movements in choreography. They serve as protectors of temples, guardians of refugees, and sometimes as holy assassins, targeting particularly dangerous servants of Lold. Sword dancers undergo grueling training that pushes mortal bodies to their limits. They practice forms in darkness to develop non-visual awareness. They dance for hours without rest to build endurance. They meditate under moonlight to deepen their connection to Eilistree's power. Those who complete the training become formidable warriors, capable of facing multiple opponents simultaneously, their blades singing through the air in patterns too complex for enemies to predict. They learn to channel divine magic through their movements, their dances becoming prayers that heal allies and smite foes. The Darksong Knights represent another specialized order, focusing on music and magic combined. These priestesses master the most complex songs in Eilistree's repertoire, learning harmonies that can shatter stone or heal mortal wounds, melodies that inspire courage or strike terror into hearts. They often serve as wandering missionaries, traveling between communities, carrying messages, spreading their goddesses' teachings through song. Their voices become instruments of divine power, capable of manifesting magic through pure sound. Darksong Knights train their voices like warriors train their bodies, practicing scales and breathing exercises for hours daily. They learn songs in dozens of languages, understanding that Eilistree's message must be accessible to all who might hear it. They study music theory not as academic exercise, but as sacred knowledge, understanding how different harmonies affect mortal emotions, how rhythm can guide bodies into trance states, how melody can carry meaning beyond words. Daily worship for the faithful varies based on circumstances, but certain practices remain consistent. Each dawn and dusk, her followers face the nearest surface and sing prayers of greeting or farewell to the sun, acknowledging the light they hope one day to reclaim. These prayers are brief, simple expressions of hope rather than elaborate rituals. A single voice lifted in a moment of sincerity pleases Eilistraee more than hours of empty ceremony. When the moon is visible, either in the sky above or through some crack in underdark stone, the faithful stop whatever they are doing to acknowledge it. They might sing a brief song, perform a simple dance, or simply stand in silence, feeling moonlight touch their skin. These moments of connection sustain them through darker times, remind them that their goddess watches over them, that they have not been forgotten or abandoned. The full moon brings major celebrations called Moonlight dances, gatherings where all faithful in an area come together for night-long festivals of worship, community, and joy. These celebrations begin at moonrise with formal rituals led by priestesses, prayers and offerings presented to the goddess. Then, the formal structure gives way to spontaneous celebration. People dance individually or in groups, following no choreography except the movement of their hearts. Musicians play instruments or sing, their melodies weaving together into complex harmonies. Food is shared freely, hunted game, prepared with respect and gratitude, offered to all regardless of their ability to reciprocate. These moonlight dances serve multiple purposes simultaneously. They are worship services and social gatherings, therapy sessions, and recruitment opportunities. Drow considering leaving Lolt's service often attend as observers, watching from shadows, seeing the joy that freedom brings. The faithful make no attempt to proselytize aggressively during these gatherings, understanding that their happiness itself is the best argument for their goddess's way. Simply witnessing people dance without fear, laugh without cruelty, touch each other with affection rather than calculation, plants seeds that sometimes grow into full conversion. Temples to Eilistraee exist in two very different contexts, surface and underdark, each adapted to its environment while maintaining core principles. Surface temples are typically built in forested areas where moonlight can filter through leaves, designed to blend with natural surroundings rather than dominate them. They feature open pavilions where dancing can occur under open sky, meditation gardens where followers can walk in contemplation, and sanctuaries where more formal rituals take place. These temples welcome visitors, maintain positive relations with nearby communities, and serve as way stations for Drow refugees, making the difficult transition from underdark to surface life. The promenade of the Dark Maiden stands as the most famous of her surface temples, though its fame comes partly from its unique history. Located beneath the city of Waterdeep, carved into natural caverns that connect to both surface and underdark, the promenade serves as neutral ground where surface dwellers and Drow can meet with some degree of safety. Its founding involved dramatic events, including the redemption of major Drow houses, the defeat of powerful enemies, and divine intervention from Eilistraee herself. The promenade features vast chambers decorated with luminescent fungi arranged in artistic patterns, underground streams channeled to create musical waterfalls, and crystal formations that catch and amplify the smallest amount of light into displays of breathtaking beauty. At its heart lies the Hall of the Dark Maiden, a massive cavern where thousands can gather for ceremonies. The ceiling has been carved and polished to reflect light like a mirror, creating the illusion of dancing under open sky, even miles beneath the earth. Daily life at the promenade involves constant activity. Priestesses counsel new converts struggling with guilt over their pasts. Teachers instruct young Drow in surface languages and customs. Warriors train to defend against inevitable attacks from Lolt's faithful, who view the temple as heresy incarnate. Artisans create items for trade, providing income to support the community. Musicians practice in designated chambers, their songs echoing through stone corridors, reminding everyone who hears that beauty persists even in darkness. But the promenade represents only one temple, one community. Countless smaller shrines and temples exist scattered across the surface world and throughout accessible Underdark regions. Some are nothing more than sacred groves marked by silver symbols carved into trees. Others are hidden chambers in cave systems, protected by magic and secrecy from Lolt's hunters. Each serves its local community, provides sanctuary for those seeking it, and maintains connection to the broader faith through traveling priestesses who carry messages and coordinate activities. Hidden temples in the Underdark face constant danger. Lolt's faithful actively seek them out for destruction, viewing any alternative to the Spider Queen as intolerable threat. These temples employ extensive security measures, hidden entrances, magical wards, sentinel animals, and warrior priestesses who guard approaches. They often appear as natural caverns rather than constructed buildings, designed to avoid drawing attention. Worship occurs in whispers during full moon celebrations, rather than in the exuberant song preferred at surface temples. Sacred rituals beyond the standard Moonlight celebrations mark important moments in a follower's journey. Initiation rituals welcome new converts, involving ritual bathing in blessed water, anointing with oils infused with moonstone dust, and first participation in sky-clad moonlight dancing. The initiate speaks their commitment publicly, renouncing Lolt or whatever darkness they are leaving behind, pledging themselves to Eilistree's service. Existing clergy witness and validate this commitment, welcoming the new member into their community with songs and embraces. Coming-of-age rituals for children raised in the faith involve their first independent participation in sacred dances, demonstrating that they understand the teachings well enough to practice them without guidance. This typically occurs in early adolescence, marking transition from child to young adult in the community's eyes. The ritual involves the youth choosing their own dance, their own expression of what the goddess means to them, performing it before the assembled faithful during a full moon gathering. Marriage ceremonies in Eilistree's faith emphasize joy, commitment, and mutual support rather than property transfer or social advancement. The couple dances together under moonlight, their movements synchronized, demonstrating their ability to move as one unit while maintaining individual grace. Priestesses bless the union, calling upon Eilistraee to watch over the marriage, to guide the couple through difficulties, to help them maintain the love that brought them together. The ceremony concludes with community dancing, everyone present joining in celebration of love and partnership. Death rituals focus on returning the deceased to nature while preserving their memory through song. Bodies are buried in sacred ground when possible, placed in positions suggesting peaceful sleep, surrounded by flowers and meaningful objects. The community gathers to sing the departed soul's story, recounting their deeds, their struggles, their victories. These songs serve as both eulogy and prayer, asking Eilistraee to welcome the soul into her realm, to grant them peace in death that they may have lacked in life. Confession and penance hold important places in the faith's practice, though they differ significantly from similar practices in other religions. Followers confessing misdeeds do so privately to priestesses, speaking honestly about their actions and their regrets. The priestess listens without judgment, understanding that those who come to Eilistraee often carry enormous burdens of guilt. Penance does not involve punishment, but rather constructive action, performing service for those harmed if possible, creating beauty to balance destruction caused, or dedicating oneself to preventing others from making similar mistakes. Healing ceremonies combine divine magic with psychological counsel, recognizing that wounds of spirit require different treatment than wounds of flesh. Priestesses skilled in both magical healing and emotional support help survivors of trauma process their experiences, offering techniques for managing pain, building resilience, and slowly reconstructing shattered identities. These sessions often involve music and gentle movement, using Eilistraee's sacred arts to bypass verbal defenses and reach deeper levels of consciousness where true healing can occur. The faithful observe numerous minor holy days throughout the year, each marking important events in their goddess's mythology or celebrating aspects of her nature. The Night of Ascension commemorates Eilistraee's choice to descend with the Drow, celebrated with solemn dances and songs of sacrifice. The hunt's moon marks the beginning of winter, when hunting becomes most critical for survival. Blessed through rituals, asking for Eilistraee's guidance in providing for communities. The Song of Summer celebrates the longest day of the year with night-long festivities, dancing from dusk until the following dawn in defiance of darkness. Personal devotions vary widely among followers based on individual circumstances and preferences. Some maintain small shrines in their homes, simple altars bearing moonstone crystals and silver symbols. Others carry portable devotional items, medallions, or small sculptures they can touch in moments requiring courage or comfort. Many develop personal prayers or songs, individual expressions of faith that feel authentic to their experiences. Eilistraee encourages this personalization, valuing sincere individual expression over rote repetition of standardized formulas. The practice of her faith emphasizes accessibility and inclusivity. The illiterate can worship through dance and song. The impoverished require no expensive offerings. The traumatized need not speak of their pain until ready. The inexperienced receive patient teaching without shame. This approach makes her faith attractive to the marginalized, the broken, the forgotten. Everyone whom Lolt's society has discarded or destroyed. In Eilistraee's embrace, they find not demands for perfection, but acceptance of their imperfect humanity, not judgment for their past, but hope for their future. And so her faithful persist, dancing in moonlight, singing hope into darkness, protecting those who cannot protect themselves. They build communities founded on trust rather than terror, cooperation rather than competition, love rather than fear. They prove through daily practice that Drow can be more than monsters, that redemption is possible, that the Dark Maiden's sacrifice was not in vain. In every dance, every song, every moment of joy reclaimed from darkness, they honor their goddess and proclaim that a better way exists for those brave enough to seek it. Section 5. The Eternal Struggle and Divine Conflicts. The moment Eilistraee descended with the Drow, she made herself enemy to powers that dwarf mortal comprehension. Lolt saw in her stepdaughter's presence not compassion, but threat, not sacrifice, but rebellion. The Spider Queen understood immediately that Eilistraee offered the one thing that could undermine her carefully constructed society: hope. And from that moment forward, the two goddesses existed in a state of eternal conflict that continues to this day. A war fought not just in divine realms, but in the hearts and minds of every Drow who must choose between them. Lolt's opposition to Eilistraee operates on multiple levels simultaneously. At the divine level, the Spider Queen actively works to diminish her stepdaughter's influence, to corrupt her followers, to destroy her temples, and murder her priestesses. She sends demonic servants, particularly Yachlal demons that can assume Drow form, to infiltrate communities and hunt down worshippers of the Dark Maiden. She rewards mortal followers who bring her evidence of Eilistraee's temples with power and prestige. She personally intervenes to thwart redemption when particularly important Drow consider abandoning her service, appearing in visions to threaten or tempt them back to her web. But the theological conflict runs deeper than simple divine rivalry. Lolt's entire philosophy depends on Drow accepting certain fundamental truths about their nature. She teaches that dark elves are inherently superior to other races, yet cursed to dwell in darkness, that they can only thrive through betrayal and domination, that mercy is weakness and compassion is foolishness. Her society functions through these principles, where the strong devour the weak, and every interaction carries potential for treachery. Mothers betray daughters. Daughters murder mothers. Houses rise and fall through calculated backstabbing. This is Lolt's vision made manifest, and it requires absolute commitment from her followers. Eilistraee's teachings directly contradict every principle Lolt holds sacred. The Dark Maiden says Drow can be kind without becoming victims. She teaches that cooperation produces better results than competition. She offers redemption to those who have committed terrible acts in Lolt's name, promising that past crimes need not define future possibilities. She demonstrates through her own existence that a goddess can love her followers without demanding blood sacrifice, can offer power without requiring betrayal, can guide without terrorizing. Every Drow who converts to Eilistraee's faith represents a personal defeat for the Spider Queen, a soul stolen from her web, a worshipper lost, and therefore divine power diminished. In the complex mechanics of divine existence, gods derive strength from worship. Each prayer offered, each ritual performed, each act committed in a deity's name feeds power back to that god. When a Drow abandons Lolt for Eilistraee, the Spider Queen loses that connection while her rival gains it. Multiply this across thousands of converts over millennia, and the threat becomes clear. Eilistraee cannot match Lolt's power currently, but every soul she saves tilts the balance slightly in her favor. Lolt cannot tolerate this. Her priestesses receive explicit instructions to root out Eilistraee's worship wherever it appears, to make examples of converts that terrify others from following similar paths. Drow cities under Lolt's control execute followers of the Dark Maiden through methods designed to maximize suffering and send clear messages about the price of heresy. They are tortured publicly, their screams echoing through caverns as warnings. Their bodies are displayed in prominent locations, reminders of what happens to those who reject the Spider Queen. Their families are often punished as well. Entire bloodlines eradicated to ensure no seed of rebellion survives. Yet Lolt cannot simply destroy Eilistraee through direct divine combat. Ancient agreements among the gods, cosmic laws that govern divine interaction, prevent deities from casually annihilating each other over theological disputes. More importantly, Eilistraee retains connections to Corellin and the Seldarine. While she exists in self-imposed exile, she remains technically part of the Elven pantheon. The Seldarine would intervene if Lolt attempted open warfare against their beloved daughter and sister, potentially triggering another war of the Seldarine with unpredictable consequences. So the Spider Queen must content herself with indirect methods, with persecution of mortal followers, with corruption rather than destruction. She plants agents within Eilistraee's communities, false converts who gather intelligence and commit sabotage at opportune moments. She arranges disasters to discredit the Dark Maiden's teachings, engineering situations where kindness leads to tragedy, where trust results in betrayal, reinforcing her message that Eilistraee's way leads only to victimization. She whispers in the minds of the faithful during moments of weakness, exploiting doubts and fears to draw them back into her web. The conflict between them plays out in countless small struggles across the Underdark and surface world. When Eilistraee's priestesses establish a new temple, Lolt's agents work to destroy it before it can take root. When refugees flee Drow cities seeking the Dark Maiden's protection, Spider Queen loyalists hunt them through miles of tunnels, determined that none shall escape alive to inspire others. When surface communities accept Drow refugees, Lolt sometimes arranges disasters to turn public opinion against dark elves, ensuring that prejudice remains strong and redemption difficult. The philosophical differences between them extend beyond tactics to fundamental questions about the nature of the Drow themselves. Lolt teaches that dark elves are fundamentally evil, that their curse defined them permanently, that they can only thrive through domination and betrayal. She points to Drow history, to their descent into darkness, to their transformation as proof that they are fundamentally different from surface elves, fundamentally requiring her harsh guidance to survive. Her society reflects this belief, creating self-fulfilling prophecy where Drow raised in cruelty become cruel, and their cruelty then proves Lolt's teaching correct. Eilistraee rejects this determinism absolutely. She teaches that the curse changed Drow physically, but not spiritually, that their capacity for good remains intact beneath layers of cultural conditioning, that they can choose differently if given the chance and support. She points to every Drow who escapes to her service as proof that redemption is possible, that Lolt's teachings are lies designed to maintain power rather than eternal truth. Her followers demonstrate through their lives that Drow can be kind, trustworthy, creative, and joyful when freed from the Spider Queen's influence. But Lolt is not Eilistraee's only divine opposition. Her own brother Viheron, the Masked Lord, pursues goals that sometimes align with hers, but ultimately remain incompatible with her vision of Drow redemption. Viheron preaches Drow supremacy, teaching that dark elves should dominate the surface world rather than seeking reconciliation with it. He attracts male Drow tired of their oppression under matriarchal rule, promising them power and revenge against those who degraded them. The relationship between Eilistraee and Viheron carries complexity born of familial bonds twisted by philosophical differences. They are siblings, born of the same parents, shaped by the same catastrophe. In theory, they should be natural allies against Lolt, working together to free Drow from the Spider Queen's tyranny. But their methods and end goals differ so dramatically that cooperation remains difficult despite their shared enemy. Viheron seeks to elevate male Drow through conquest and infiltration. He teaches his followers to wear masks, both literal and metaphorical, to hide their true natures, to work in shadows until the moment comes to strike. His philosophy embraces deception as tool, values ambition as virtue, and promises that Drow will rule rather than serve. He offers liberation from Lolt's matriarchy, but would replace it with structures equally oppressive, merely inverting the power dynamic rather than dismantling hierarchy itself. Eilistraee wants no Drow supremacy, male or female. She teaches equality among all people regardless of race or gender, envisions a future where Drow integrate peacefully with surface societies rather than conquering them. She values honesty over deception, community over individual ambition, cooperation over domination. Where Viheron arms Drow with daggers and teaches them to strike from shadows, Eilistraee gives them swords and teaches them to dance in Moonlight, where he offers his followers masks to hide behind. She asks them to dance naked under the moon, stripped of all pretense. These differences create friction between their faiths, despite their common opposition to Lult. Eilistree's followers view Viheron's teachings as perpetuating the very philosophies that corrupted Drow civilization, merely changing who benefits from cruelty rather than eliminating cruelty itself. Viheron's followers see Eilistree's path as weak and naive, believe her emphasis on reconciliation will lead to Drow subjugation by surface races rather than liberation. They respect her opposition to Lult, but consider her methods inadequate for achieving true freedom. Their followers sometimes cooperate on specific goals, particularly when working against Lult's interests directly. A temple of Eilistraee might shelter male Drow fleeing persecution in Lult cities, even knowing those males will likely convert to Viheron's worship rather than the Dark Maidens. Agents of the Masked Lord might provide intelligence to Eilistree's priestesses about planned attacks from Spider Queen loyalists, recognizing mutual benefit in weakening their common enemy. But these collaborations remain temporary and tactical, never growing into the lasting alliance that might genuinely threaten Lult's dominance. Beyond conflicts with other Drow deities, Eilistraee must navigate complex relationships with surface gods and their followers. Most surface deities of good alignment view her sympathetically, understanding her sacrifice and respecting her goals. The Seldarine, her divine family, maintains special affection despite her self-imposed exile. Corellin in particular aches for his daughter, sends what aid he can within cosmic restrictions, and ensures that other elven gods support her work when possible. Sehanine Moonbow shares particular affinity with Eilistraee, both goddesses claiming aspects of Moonlight within their portfolios. They coordinate to avoid conflict, Sehanine focusing on Moonlight's mystical and meditative aspects, while Eilistraee emphasizes its role in joy and celebration. The two goddesses remain close despite Eilistree's separation from Arvandor, with Sehanine sometimes manifesting to assist in critical situations where her niece requires aid beyond what she can provide alone. Surface deities of good alignment generally support Eilistree's mission while maintaining appropriate distance. They recognize the value of offering Drow an alternative to evil, but remain wary of dark elves generally, knowing that for everyone who seeks redemption, thousands remain loyal to Lult. They provide assistance when requested, but do not commit resources that might be needed elsewhere, viewing Drow redemption as worthy cause, but not their primary responsibility. Human followers of surface gods present more complicated picture. Many harbor deep prejudice against all Drow, having suffered raids from Underdark cities or heard stories of dark elf cruelty passed down through generations. They struggle to accept that followers of Eilistraee are different, that skin color does not determine moral character, that redemption is genuine rather than elaborate deception. Eilistree's priestesses spend enormous effort building bridges with surface communities, proving through consistent good behavior that they can be trusted, slowly wearing down centuries of justified suspicion built on real atrocities. Notable mortal champions of Eilistraee have shaped her church's history through their extraordinary deeds and sacrifice. Eilistraee Veladorn, one of the legendary Seven Sisters and chosen of Mistra, also served Eilistraee faithfully, becoming High Priestess of the Promenade, though primarily devoted to the goddess of magic. Eilistraee recognized the Dark Maiden's mission as worthy of support and used her considerable power to protect Drow refugees and establish safe havens. Her involvement brought legitimacy to Eilistraee's cause, proving that even the most powerful surface mages saw value in Drow redemption. Lyriel Beaner represented another kind of champion, a Drow of noble birth from one of Menzoberranzan's most powerful houses, who rejected her family's evil and sought freedom on the surface. Her adventures demonstrated to skeptical surface dwellers that Drow could be heroes rather than villains, that noble birth in Lolt's cities did not predetermine evil nature, though her relationship with Eilistraee remained complex. Her very existence proved the Dark Maiden's central teaching about Drow capacity for good. Countless unnamed champions served with equal devotion, if less fame. Priestesses who died defending temples from overwhelming attacks. Warriors who gave their lives protecting refugees from Loltite hunters. Missionaries who ventured into hostile Drow cities, knowing they might never return, planting seeds of hope that might grow long after their deaths. These heroes are commemorated in songs sung during full moon celebrations, their names preserved in oral tradition even when no written records survive. Each represents a victory against darkness, proof that Eilistraee's path is worth the sacrifices it demands. Major historical events have shaped the eternal conflict. The founding of the Promenade of the Dark Maiden beneath Waterdeep marked a turning point, establishing a permanent and publicly known temple that could not be easily destroyed without triggering surface intervention. The time of troubles, when gods walked the realms in mortal form, tested Eilistraee's commitment as she manifested physically to protect her followers during a period of cosmic chaos. The conflict continues today, eternal struggle between hope and despair, redemption and damnation, light and darkness. Every Drow who chooses Eilistraee represents a battle won. Every temple that survives another year constitutes a victory. Every song sung in Moonlight becomes an act of defiance against those who would prefer Drow remain monsters rather than people capable of change. And through it all, Eilistraee dances, her movements a prayer and a promise that darkness need not be permanent, that redemption remains possible regardless of how far one has fallen, that moonlight can reach even the deepest underdark caverns if given the chance. Section 6. Death, Resurrection, and Hope Renewed. The unthinkable happened in the year 1377 Dale Reckoning. Eilistraee, who had endured millennia of exile, who had survived countless attempts on her divine existence, who had persisted through ages when her followers numbered only scattered handfuls across vast territories, faced a threat unlike any before. Her brother Viheron, the masked lord, had orchestrated a scheme of devastating complexity. He intended to destroy Eilistraee and absorb her divine essence, strengthening himself for his own war against Lold and his vision of Drow supremacy. The conflict between siblings had simmered for millennia, philosophical differences occasionally erupting into direct confrontation between their followers. But Viheron had grown weary of mere ideological opposition. He saw in his sister's continued existence an obstacle to his plans. Her message of peaceful integration contradicted his vision of conquest. Her followers provided alternatives to Drow males who might otherwise join his cause. In his calculation, she had to be eliminated, and he believed he had found the method to accomplish what even Lolt could not. The details of what transpired remain shrouded in divine mystery and the chaos of that terrible time. What is known is that Viheron manipulated events and mortal agents in ways that left Eilistraee vulnerable. The exact mechanism of her death varies across accounts, with some sources suggesting direct confrontation, while others imply more indirect means. What remains consistent is the outcome. Eilistraee fell, her divine essence compromised in ways that should have been impossible for a deity of her power. Her death sent shockwaves through multiple planes of existence. Those attuned to such things reported that the moon itself seemed to dim for nights following her fall, as though mourning the passing of its greatest champion. Followers of the Dark Maiden experienced a profound silence in their souls where her presence had always dwelt, an emptiness that no prayer could fill. Temples went dark as divine magic failed. Priestesses who had channeled her power for decades found themselves suddenly, terrifyingly mortal, their connection to the goddess severed completely. But death for a god operates differently than death for mortals. Divine essence cannot simply vanish, cannot be destroyed, but only transformed or transferred. Viheron intended to fully absorb Eilistraee's power, to consume her portfolio, and strengthen himself with her divine strength. Yet something went wrong with his carefully orchestrated plan. The absorption occurred, but not as he intended. Instead of consuming his sister's essence cleanly, he found himself merged with her in ways he had not anticipated, their divine natures entangling in a cosmic struggle that diminished both rather than empowering either. The being that resulted from this forced merger was neither fully Viheron nor fully Eilistraee, but something twisted between them, a divine entity containing both their essences, locked in internal war. This abomination persisted for a time, though how long remains unclear given the flexible nature of divine time perception. Followers of both deities found their prayers answered by something that felt wrong, divine magic flowing, but tainted by the unnaturalness of the merger. Based on the accounts that survive from this period, it seems this state caused profound confusion and distress among the faithful, who sensed their gods were present, yet fundamentally changed. Other powers could not allow such disruption to persist. When the cosmic order is so dramatically violated, when divine essences merge against natural law, intervention becomes necessary. The exact details of how the separation occurred remain obscure, lost in divine politics and cosmic mechanics beyond mortal comprehension. What is clear is that during the great upheaval known as the Sundering, when the realms themselves were reshaped and divine arrangements restructured, Eilistraee and Heron were separated and restored to individual existence. The Sundering represented a period of tremendous cosmic change, a reordering of reality itself that allowed for corrections of previous alterations to the divine landscape. Drawing from what is known about this event, it appears that powers greater than individual deities seized the opportunity to repair damage done during earlier transitions, restoring balance where it had been lost. Eilistraee's restoration during this time suggests that her exile and sacrifice had earned her a place in the cosmic order that could not be permanently erased, that her mission remained necessary enough to warrant divine intervention for her return. But she returned changed, having experienced death, having been merged against her will with her brother, having witnessed from some strange perspective the suffering her absence caused her faithful. Eilistraee emerged from this ordeal with deeper understanding of mortality and fiercer commitment to her mission. She had always been compassionate, but now her compassion carried the weight of personal experience with violation and loss that made her even more accessible to traumatized followers seeking understanding from their goddess. Her teachings shifted subtly after her return, incorporating new emphases that reflected what she had learned. She spoke more frequently about the importance of community resilience, about building structures that could survive even when divine guidance becomes temporarily unavailable. She emphasized that faith is not merely about receiving divine power, but about embodying divine principles in daily life, about becoming the light rather than simply seeking it. She taught that hope must be maintained even when the divine seems absent, that trust in eventual return sustains through the darkest nights. The years of her absence, that dark period when her followers had no goddess to guide them, had tested the faithful in ways that proved their devotion beyond doubt. Temples continued operating despite having no direct divine contact. Priestesses maintained rituals, even when no power answered their prayers. Communities held together through sheer determination and mutual support, demonstrating the very principles Eilistraee had taught them. They had learned from their goddess that hope persists even in absolute darkness, and they proved that teaching through their refusal to abandon faith, even when faith itself seemed to have abandoned them. Some communities fractured during this time, individuals giving in to despair or converting to other deities who still answered prayers. Lolt's agents exploited the opportunity ruthlessly, whispering that the Dark Maiden's silence proved she had abandoned her followers, that redemption was illusion, and only the Spider Queen offered reliable power. Some believed these lies, returning to Lolt's service or scattering into independent survival. But most held firm, waiting with patient hope for the return they trusted would come, refusing to believe their goddess would leave them orphaned forever. When Eilistraee finally returned fully to her power and her followers, the celebration exceeded anything seen before in her church's history. Accounts from this period describe moonlight shining brighter than anyone could remember, temples illuminating with divine radiance, priestesses feeling their connection to the goddess, restored like severed limbs, suddenly regenerating. Prayers were answered with what witnesses described as almost desperate speed, as though Eilistraee herself was overjoyed to be able to help her faithful again. Divine magic flowed more strongly than before, and her manifestations became more frequent, suggesting she needed to reassure herself that her followers remained, that they had not abandoned her during her forced absence. The incident also permanently altered her relationship with Viheron. Whatever affection or hope for reconciliation she had maintained toward her brother died during that forced merger, the violation of being absorbed against her will, the experience of her essence entangled with his in ways that nature never intended crossed boundaries that even her forgiving nature cannot overlook. She now treats him as enemy rather than wayward family member, opposes his plans actively rather than simply offering alternatives. She will still accept his male followers who seek redemption, will still offer them the same welcome she offers all who come sincerely. But she harbors no illusions about her brother's capacity for change or his willingness to respect boundaries. In the current era, Eilistraee's position among the gods has strengthened through her survival and return. The Seldarine, reminded through nearly losing her how precious she truly is, welcome her presence more actively. Corellin, who grieved his daughter during her absence, provides more direct support than he offered in previous ages. Other good-aligned deities view her with increased respect, recognizing that a goddess who can survive attempted deicide and forced merger possesses power and determination that commands acknowledgement. Even neutral deities pay more attention, understanding that she represents a force whose influence continues growing despite all attempts to eliminate her. Her mortal church has expanded in recent years, emboldened by her return and energized by having survived the crisis of her absence. New temples have been established in locations previously too dangerous to attempt. Surface communities that once rejected Drow refugees have begun accepting them more readily. influenced by consistent good behavior from Eilistraee's followers and advocacy from sympathetic surface dwellers. The promenade beneath Waterdeep continues as a major center of her faith, its influence extending far beyond its physical location through networks of allied temples and wandering priestesses. Yet fundamental realities remain unchanged. Drow society continues under Lolt's domination, the Spider Queen's cities still sprawling through underdark darkness, their terrible beauty built on slavery and suffering, their hierarchies maintained through betrayal and cruelty. Millions of Drow continue worshipping Lolt, continue believing her lies, continue perpetuating the society that has defined them for millennia. The Dark Maiden's influence, while growing, remains limited compared to her stepmother's overwhelming dominance. But cracks appear in Lolt's control that widen with each passing year. More Drow question openly, more flee to the surface, more seek alternatives to the Spider Queen's tyranny. Not enough to constitute revolution, not yet sufficient to threaten Lolt's power directly, but enough to prove that change is possible, that the tide might someday turn. Every Drow who dances in Moonlight represents a seed of hope planted in darkness, a possibility that might grow into forests of freedom, given sufficient time and nurturing. Eilistraee's current mission focuses on interconnected goals that build toward her ultimate vision. She works to increase the number of redeemed Drow, to establish more temples in more locations, to build stronger bridges between dark elves and surface communities. She seeks to preserve Drow culture's positive aspects while eliminating its destructive elements, to help her followers remember their history without being imprisoned by it. She teaches that redemption is not about becoming surface elves with dark skin, but about becoming the best version of Drow identity, reclaiming the grace and beauty that existed before corruption twisted it into cruelty. She focuses increasingly on preventing atrocities rather than simply offering redemption after they occur. Her followers work to disrupt Lolt's operations, to sabotage slave-taking raids, to free captives before they can be dragged to underdark cities and broken. This more active approach represents evolution in her strategy, acknowledgement that sometimes preventing evil requires more than offering alternatives. Her sword dancers have become more militant, better trained, more willing to take offensive action against particularly dangerous servants of the Spider Queen. The question of whether Drow can truly be redeemed on a mass scale rather than individually remains unanswered. Eilistraee believes it possible, maintains faith that someday the majority of Drow will abandon Lolt and seek light. Skeptics, even among her own followers, doubt whether such fundamental cultural transformation can occur without some catalyst so dramatic it would reshape Drow civilization entirely. They point out that thousands of years of teaching have converted only a small fraction of the total Drow population, that Lolt's influence shows no signs of weakening despite everything. But Eilistraee has learned patience across millennia of exile and through the trial of death and return. She does not expect instant results, does not demand that redemption occur on mortal timescales. She thinks in terms of ages, measures progress across generations rather than years. Each temple that survives another decade, each child raised in her faith rather than Lolt's, each Drow who dies free rather than enslaved, represents incremental progress toward the eventual goal. She trusts that truth and compassion will ultimately triumph because they must. Because any universe where evil permanently defeats good would be too terrible to accept. Her vision for the future involves Drow cities on the surface, dark elves living openly among other races without fear or prejudice. Moonlight dances attended by thousands rather than dozens. She dreams of the day when being Drow does not automatically suggest evil. When surface dwellers see dark skin and white hair, and think of artisans and musicians rather than raiders and slavers. She imagines underdark cities transformed into places of beauty without cruelty, where magnificent architecture rivals anything in Lolt's realms, but built by free people rather than slaves. This vision may seem impossible given current realities, may appear naive to those who understand the depths of Lolt's power and the extent of cultural corruption. But Eilistraee's entire existence proves that impossible goals can be achieved through sufficient dedication. She descended into darkness when no one believed Drow deserved a goddess who loved them. She survived millennia of exile when others predicted she would abandon her mission within centuries. She returned from death itself when her destruction seemed permanent. If she can accomplish these impossible feats, perhaps Drow redemption on a civilizational scale lies within reach, given sufficient time and unwavering commitment. Her followers take inspiration from her example, continue their work despite overwhelming odds, maintain hope despite constant setbacks. They know they may not live to see the full realization of their goddess's vision, that the transformation they seek might require centuries or millennia more, but they persist anyway, because the alternative is accepting that Drow are irredeemable, that darkness is permanent, that Lolt has won forever, and that they will never accept. So they dance in moonlight, scattered groups in hidden places, small communities maintaining faith against all reason. They sing songs of hope to children who have never seen the sun, but might someday. They teach swordwork to refugees learning to defend rather than oppress. They counsel the traumatized, shelter the fleeing, welcome the outcast. They build, slowly and carefully, the foundation for something better, trusting that their goddess watches over them, that their sacrifices matter, that their work contributes to eventual victory, however distant it may seem. Eilistraee herself continues her eternal dance, moving through darkness with moonlight trailing in her wake. She appears to those who need her, speaks to those ready to listen, intervenes when circumstances permit. She cannot save everyone, cannot prevent every tragedy, cannot force anyone to accept redemption who refuses it. But she can offer hope, can provide alternatives, can demonstrate through her own existence that love is stronger than hate, that light survives in darkness, that redemption remains possible regardless of how far one has fallen or how completely one has been broken. You have journeyed through the story of the Dark Maiden, from her divine birth in Arvandor through her descent into darkness, from her struggles against overwhelming opposition to her death and miraculous return. You have seen how she embodies hope itself, how she transforms sacrifice into purpose, how she proves that no soul is beyond redemption if given genuine chance and support. Her story continues, unfinished and ongoing, written in moonlight and blood and songs that echo through underdark caverns and surface temples alike. Remember her when you see moonlight touching unexpected places, when you witness redemption that seemed impossible, when you encounter beauty persisting despite surrounding darkness. Remember that a goddess chose exile so that others might find hope, that she gave up comfortable divinity to walk in hell, that she endures separation and persecution for the sake of people most consider beyond saving. Remember that her dance continues, that her song still echoes, that her light still shines for those brave enough to seek it. And perhaps, in remembering, you will understand something fundamental about the nature of hope, about the power of sacrifice, about the possibility of redemption, even in the darkest circumstances. Perhaps you will see that darkness need not be permanent, that fallen people can rise again, that love persists even when everything else fails. Perhaps you will hear, faint but unmistakable, the sound of moonlight dancing in places you never expected to find it. If you found meaning in this journey through Eilistraee's mythology, if her story of sacrifice and redemption resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps me continue exploring the deep lore and forgotten stories of the Forgotten Realms, bringing light to the shadows of these rich mythologies. Thank you for walking this path with me, for listening to these tales of gods and mortals, darkness and light, despair and hope. Until next time, may moonlight guide your steps, wherever they may lead.